Hello, good morning. I'm joined today by my guest Richard from Inventory Hive. Hello, Richard. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, David. Not too bad. Bit of a man cold, but we soldier on, don't we?
Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Richard, at this very difficult time.
Yeah, you'll have to tell
Um,
my wife that though.
I'm afraid there's nothing we can do on that. But what we can do is help you with your launch. It's very exciting news from Inventory Hive, and obviously I suppose if there's one star over the last sort of year, it's really been the property tour has come into its own. And it's
Yes.
something that we now utilize both in sales and in lettings.
Yeah.
And 360 property tours have been around for a while, but hitherto, I think they've been quite expensive in terms of
Mhm.
both hosting them and also the equipment necessary and the investment in time and sort of staff training just to make it work. But that's all changed, hasn't it, Richard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 360 technology that we've been playing around with it for probably 3 years now, and for a couple of years, our app on iOS and Android directly integrates with a couple of manufacturers, Rico, Theta, and Insta 360. They produce some really great devices, brilliant results, and an entry level one of those is like £270 with the VAT. And the beauty of that, of course, is it is the kind of device that you could perhaps have two or three, an agency with a portfolio of maybe 750 properties, because it doesn't break the bank. And also, if you've got, maybe an apprentice or a junior in the team, you wouldn't mind letting them go out with that device and actually create that tour, because it's not, they're not breaking the bank to do it. Whereas some of the devices out there, don't get me wrong, they produce some fantastic results, some of the tech that's out there, but they can be very costly. And I think you wouldn't necessarily have a handful of those. You probably have one, and then of course everyone's fighting over who's going to use it. So,
Yeah.
um, and the other really really important thing, and I'd like to say that this was by design, but it was more by luck than anything. That the vast majority of people that engage with a virtual tour, whether it be someone looking to buy a house, or a resident on build to rent, or a letting, a tenant with a letting agency, 9 times out of 10 they're viewing it on their mobile phone. um, and therefore the results themselves, you don't necessarily need to have this, really high definition thing, because all they want to do is just have a bit of control when viewing the tour and just get a sense of scale and
Yeah.
location. And of course, 360 is a brilliant way of doing that. You don't necessarily get that with a video walkthrough. I mean, again, you see some really great video walkthroughs that are put together, and some brilliant presenters now as well, that are presenting these properties. Some, really funny, and some obviously really know their onions when they're doing that. But I think sometimes if people want to get to the point, they want to go and have a look in the garden, or what's the kitchen like, that's what a virtual tour is great for.
I think a virtual tour as well is not just for the sort of previewing before you've seen it. I think where it probably comes into its own is you've seen the property in person. You want to maybe go back for a second viewing. You can't get the time that you
Yeah,
need, and you just want to go and have a look and just have a really good look around. And because it's almost a fully immersive
yeah,
experience, if you wanted to, you can go and sort of examine what's in the corner of the kitchen and
yeah.
where everything is in terms of layout and where your stuff will fit in. So I think it probably cuts down the number of viewings you have to do in order to get to the point where the person's ready to offer.
Yeah.
um, and so that's a really interesting sort of efficiency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also as well, I think sometimes agents, from the conversations that we've had, will shun 360 in favour of a video, for a couple of reasons. One might be because they might want to do a bit of presenting, um, and the other one might be that when they actually do the video, it might be that it's going to be too time consuming compared to doing a tour. Well, actually, really, when you do a video, you often have to stop and start. There's some editing involved
Oh,
afterwards.
loads, yeah.
So actually,
Don't give
if you,
away all my secrets, but yeah, there's
yeah,
tons involved.
exactly, yeah, so it's almost a skill set that you've got to adopt, or you've got to outsource that to somebody afterwards. And actually, obviously, this is what, like I said before, we've been integrating directly with these cameras for some time, and that's really unique offering with Inventory Hive. Entry level, it's affordable. Subscriptions that you can sort of grow with as you start using it. But you can pop your camera on a tripod, and then you can connect via the Inventory Hive app, go out the room and shut the door, because that's really important, David, because otherwise you're in the fetal position in the corner of the room, or like your feet sticking out behind the sofa. So you can put it in the room, go out, shut the door, press the button, and then it tags that image to that property in that room, which is a huge time saver for anybody that's ever done a tour before. Often you'll take the images on the app that the camera comes with, and then you have to go through the gallery and work out which image was which kitchen at which house. And if you look at a 360 image before it's sort of stitched together, it's like looking into a spoon. So it's not easy to work out which image is for where, and that's something that obviously we've I mean, it's tried and tested. Although this is a new feature for us, we've been doing that now for a couple of years, and
So
it's a
take us
godsend.
through. I mean, we discussed off camera that there are a lot of different makes of 360 camera. There's a lot of different platforms.
Yeah.
We all probably know the main ones in terms of the more expensive ones. But if you're
Yes.
an agent that's looking to sort of break into using 360 technology, and we'll talk about the applications, because it's not just for standard
Yeah.
property tours and sales. You guys have been using them to
Mm-hmm.
great effect on sort of inventories and inspections. A really, really great tool, and captures all of that detail. But what makes your tours different to, say, somebody else's?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the main thing for us in terms of the results are great. The subscriptions are straightforward. We offer the versatility, whether you're in sales or whether you're in lettings. A really nice point here to note is if you do an inventory using a 360 image today, and then the tenant moves out in 6 months' time, you can flip that into a tour and you don't have to go back. But I think it's probably would be a good opportunity, David, for me to just really quickly show you,
Yeah, would
because
you? That would be great.
I think the end result is obviously really important, and the end results are great. But the big thing with tours is the actual creation bit. It's what makes it efficient, and that's the bit that we're confident we've nailed, and obviously the testing and the feedback is suggesting that too. So if I just go into here and hit on share my screen. As I was saying, so in terms of actually creating a tour, it's dead straightforward to do that. So you can just hit on add, and then you can pop your tour name in here. And then just hit save, and next thing you've created one, it's up and running. If you have a little bit more time on your hands, you can add some more detail if you want to. So you can give it a public tour name, which is what the recipient of a tour will see at the top. So in this case, example house just here.
Yeah.
And then they can also choose the branch that they want to save it in if they want to be clever with it. And we say that because we've got quite a few users that have different brands inside their account, and they want to have, like, I don't know, this could be red lettings or yellow lettings. And then when you click on that, it also shows the contact info as well. Up in the top right corner, they can add their floor plans in as well, upload those in. So it's nice and simple and straightforward. But the creation part is where we feel like the magic happens, because this is the bit that can be quite time consuming.
Yes.
So in here, I mean, this is quite a large property, and it's just a case of once you've got your hotspot in here, you can then say, right, I want to add another hotspot in. So if I wanted to, I don't know, do a link to, over here, I just add my hotspot in, choose a link. I can come down here and you just literally move it around and then hit done, and it's set a link to the next room or space straight away.
I'm presuming people tend to choose the hotspots genuinely on as the features of the house that they think people should be spending the most time on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a hotspot would typically be, a link from one, room or space to another. But also a nice example in here, if I just sort of go to this example. So here I am outside the property.
Yeah.
I can then say, right, from here I can pan around. Like we've got a drone shot up here.
Yeah.
Which is quite neat because it shows the location of the area.
Cool.
So then I can come back down here and then say, right, I want to have a look maybe inside the property here.
That is really neat, because previously it obviously gave you this kind of they used to display it almost like a doll's house image, and you could see the inside of a house, but getting that outside detail in terms of drone shots and different angles, it's something you always missed out on. But it's superb that you've got it all on one place here.
Yeah, and it's about doing it as quickly and efficiently. So as an example, when using the Inventory Hive app, which as it stands today, we've only released the browser version, but the app version's coming in the next few weeks. So that's on iOS and Android. So you imagine you've got your phone out, you've connected to your 360 camera on a tripod, you've snapped a 360 of the kitchen, which is obviously the image you're looking at now. But then if you think, well, actually that Arga, that cooker in this case, is quite a nice feature, I'm also going to take a photo of that. You would just press take a photo inside the Inventory Hive app, and it opens up the camera on your phone, which means you can then take a snap. And that is something that is unique to Inventory Hive, because the vast majority of platforms out there, you have to do that kind of thing from your desktop computer after you've taken your images. And that's I would say a real key element of how things are done on the platform. And really there's not a lot more else to show you, because it's that straightforward. I mean, publishing a tour is nice and simple as well. You can create a QR code download as well. Of course, that's great for putting on window ads, for instance. If you've got someone walking past your agency,
that's brilliant.
they can go in there and it's just about publishing and unpublishing those tours. But it is dead straightforward. The whole point of this, of course, is that you don't want to be spending a lot of time in the property creating your tour if you don't want to. But equally, some people, if they've got a bit of time on their hands, they'll finish it off on the app while they're there. And obviously, that, as I say, that's something that is unique to what we're doing. And I suppose just while I'm in the flow, David, while I'm in the zone, I'll just really quickly, touch on the billing. In actual fact, it'd probably be better to do it from here, nice and simple. I've got one I made earlier. So on our pricing, you can see here that this is again another reason why it makes virtual tours attainable. So if, for instance, you wanted to have 10 publishable slots at any one time, you can have 10 published tours for £15 a month, and that allows you to have 50 stored tours and then 10 published. So you've got a lot of room to play with there. And the reason we've done it in that way, David, is like in a lot of cases, an agent will be in a position where, like, I've got a property that's to let or for sale today, but in a few weeks' time, that gets let or it gets sold. I don't therefore need for it to be published. I can unpublish it, which then frees up a slot for me to go and do another one. But it doesn't mean that I'm having to pay more or pay through the nose each time I have to create a tour, because I've just got this allowance that I can increase and decrease at any one time.
So, but that's fantastic, because it really means that the basic equipment cost has come down, but also that monthly cost and the sort of hosting it and making sure that the data was securely saved and accessible. You guys are able to offer that in a really accessible and affordable format.
Yeah, absolutely. And and as you've seen there, from the results of these cameras, they're only getting better, in time as well. Sort of the first models that we were using a few years ago was the Ricoh SC, which was still a fantastic device. But over time, the exposure of them's become better. We've added the ability inside the Imagery Hive app for you to have 3 settings when you're connecting to that camera. So in other words, you don't have to go into a third-party app that comes with a camera and set your settings. You do it inside the Imagery Hive app. So you might say, I want dark exposure because it's a bright environment, etc. It's really 3 simple options. You just hit a button and then it takes the snap. And then you can have a look at it and think, well, actually, I'll probably be better on a different setting, and then take another one, and it's all done there.
You can easily play around with it, and the app itself delivers certain efficiencies in terms of connectivity as well. So if you wanted to wait until you get back to the office to upload everything, you can do that as well. That's better than a web-based browser.
It is, yeah. And I think, to be honest, I think that is something that is quite unique generally unique to inspection reporting apps. That obviously we've diversified a little bit now, and we're offering something quite unique as a platform. But where we started has enabled us to to understand that having an offline app on a tablet or a smartphone on iOS or Android, it's really important that that data doesn't get lost when they sync it up.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're storing, in excess of 55 million images now on the platform. And we're working with some of the biggest estate agency brands. A lot of our growth has come in the last couple of years, so we've got a really, it's great because we've got a captive audience now to kind of introduce it to, and that's why initially we've kind of rolled it softly to our immediate customers. Whilst we get the app version out there as well, it's usually just the safest way. And getting feedback,
And you're getting
that's
good
key,
feedback.
isn't it? Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing really with our development is having good relationships with our customers and listening and responding. And there's never enough hours in the day. There's always something to be doing, and I'm always like a flea in the ear with the devs, always trying to squeeze something extra in. But
Okay,
but
well,
yeah,
it's a good segue to talk about time, because obviously it used to, this is going back maybe 4 or 5 years to the original Ricoh cameras. It was lovely to do a 360 tour, but let's face it, it could be a bit finicky to sort of set
yeah,
up. Time wise, you often thought, well, I'll only allocate an hour for this, but you'd be there a couple of hours for
yeah.
a house. That time has come right down, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget as well, I don't have any direct stats on this, but the vast majority of, standard residential properties sort of range between, 2 and 4 beds, don't they? That those would be your typical properties. So, you know, unless you've got an unusual shaped room, like an L-shaped room, or it's I don't know, it's just a big space. You generally only need to take one snap. So you go into that room, you take your snap, pick it up on the tripod into the next room. So you can take your snaps of a typical sort of 3-bed property, in about 10 or 15 minutes. If you've got some time and you want to add some hotspots on the app while you're there, then great. Personally, I prefer to tag them in the property and then get out. So I'm spending minimal time in the property and then do the hotspot bit from my desktop. I just, it's nice to sit in the office and have a cup of tea, isn't it? And you don't,
Yeah, yeah, and you
particularly in the
don't.
winter,
But you also don't need to. I mean, I suppose just in terms of these days, limiting exposure and also bothering your clients. So if you've got a
yeah,
vendor or landlord or whoever in those properties, they don't necessarily want to wait a couple of hours for you to do all your stuff. They want you in and out of there. They'd love you in and out within an
yeah,
hour, let's face it. And it
yeah,
sounds like, if you could do a standard house in sort of 15, 20 minutes, if you had to,
yeah.
that'd be great.
Absolutely, and just on that note as well, when there are, properties with personal possessions in as well, we've come up with JMW solicitors. We've done a comprehensive guide on GDPR and CPR, Consumer Protection Regulation implications. So what we're going to do as well, David, we're going to have that posted on our Kerfuffle blog, so that
Fantastic.
people can click on that and then download that. It's so say if you're an agent, you can pop your own logo on it and save it as a PDF, and then share it with your landlords and or your or your if you're selling your property as well, do it that way. So
Yeah, because there are, I suppose, a lot of sort of GDPR and data sort of sharing
yeah,
factors that we need to look at. These are images of people's homes at the end of the day, and the agent
yeah.
needs proper permissions to be able to use those and display those to members of the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing with that is that there's I suppose there's a couple of golden rules, isn't there? You you shouldn't try and conceal an area of the property because it doesn't look great, because you will have people looking or inquiring, or in some cases letting a property having not physically seen it, and that can be dangerous ground if it's not
Yeah,
a true representation of how it is in real life. And it's the same with the GDPR side of things. It's not just about something like a bill on the fridge, that's stuck with a magnet. It could also be a family photograph as well. So generally speaking, it's wise to have that communication before going to say, look, if you do have anything that's sensitive that you don't want to be displayed on the tour, then take those pictures down temporarily. Just think ahead. It's about having that prior communication because I'm not a big fan. I might change my mind in the not too distant future, but I'm not a huge fan of having obscuring tools. For me, it's probably safer to just not take that image in the first place, or
Yeah.
at least address it in some way before you take it, because then you haven't really got to worry about, uh, you know, someone's got to remember, oh, in the bedroom at that particular house, I've got to go in and obscure the family photo. If it's not on the wall in the first place, or
But
it's covered in
it
some
it
way,
is
then
nice
that's
that you've gone to the trouble of sort of consulting a top flight law firm. I mean, we know
yeah,
JLW, they're great. And me as an agent, as a user, I would come along and with confidence know that somebody else
yeah,
has asked these questions and has got the answers, and that there's a basic guideline to follow.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we kind of in the early days, David, like we were that we wanted sort of cautious because 360 was so new. We just didn't allow our users to take 360s of outside spaces just because they could be capturing number plates of cars or people passing by, and it was just an unfamiliar territory. So we thought, right, we'd rather err on the side of caution because as data controllers, our customers are responsible for that.
Yeah.
So although we're the data processors, we've obviously got a duty to make sure the features we give them aren't going to potentially put them in hot water.
Tell us about the sort of training that I'll need to provide to my negotiators or whoever's using this camera equipment.
Yeah,
Is there a lot involved, and how quickly can I get them up and running on it?
absolutely not. We recorded a webinar on this, and we're going to be doing live sort of webinar events over the next week. And during those events, we essentially give them a download link with some 360 photos in a folder. So they can, if they haven't got a camera and they just out of curiosity want to have a play, they can download the files, watch the webinar or a recording of it, and then pause it, go in, have a little bit of a play, add the stuff in. Like the webinars that I mean, if you imagine sort of 5 minutes of that is a bit of an introduction as well. So it takes us 20 minutes, literally 20 minutes to show somebody how to add a tour, add some hotspots, and then publish it. It's for us actually, for the team, it's a breath of fresh air because inspection reporting is a bit more complex. I suppose the only bit that people would need to be aware of that we will do a bit of troubleshooting on and in advance and let them know if their camera's not responding. Well, that's a delicate one because obviously we don't manufacture the cameras, but
No.
we know if ever it's playing up, there's some simple things. It's usually turn it off and back on. Make sure that you haven't used up all the storage on the camera, which is, there's just a few sort of
Usual
schoolboy,
suspects.
schoolboy errors, as they say. So yeah, and obviously what we're all about though is kind of preempting those and letting people know before they experience it.
Talking of inspection software, obviously Inventory Hive synonymous with inventories and inspections. This is now more of a rounded tool that can be used by a multifaceted, multidiscipline agency. So if you've got sales and lettings, the obvious advantages for sales is you get to produce a fantastic 360 tour to wow your vendors and show the property to its best advantage. But going back to lettings for a second, presumably you're encouraging agents to use this for both midterm inspections, check-ins and check-outs. What are your top tips?
Yeah, so really, I mean, from our perspective, I think the best use case for 360s and inspections is an inventory check-in and a check-out. Personally, I'm not a big fan of doing it for interims, purely for that GDPR piece, really. And I think it's a real. I don't think there's a right or wrong. Don't get me, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a real topic of debate. Should you take photos of the overview of someone's bedroom when you're doing an inspection, or should it be purely focused upon maintenance issues? Personally, I think it should be the latter. But equally, agents are doing a service for their landlords, and the landlord sometimes wants to see that perspective and get a bit of a feel for it. But yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't. But yeah, I think that with 360s, it's about showing smoke alarms being present, light fittings working, the decor, items in a room. That's what a 360 is great for. You'd never use a 360 to show that the oven was clean before or after. That's down
Yeah.
to your written word and your description. I'll end up boring you, David, but yeah, this is
Well, it's fascinating because I read one stat about you guys because obviously yes, this 360 stuff is fantastic and it's a very exciting sort of addition to what you're already doing. But let's not move away too much from what you are
yeah,
providing as a core.
yeah,
I read that you at the moment you're triggering something like 65,000 approval email requests for paperless workflows. So you've really, for a vast amount of clients, taken
yeah,
away all of that painful admin
yeah.
and the backwards and forwards that we would have had to go through in terms of keeping that paper free and flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from from my perspective, the decision to develop Inventory Hive in the first place was born out of having a bad experience. Um, it was a Word document inventory that was just an itemized list with no
Yeah,
condition, cleanliness, no photos, no signing, and a bit naive at the time. And then I was a teacher at the time, and then I looked into the market, and there was software out there. But for me, it was all about having that paperless workflow because you can't really use an e-signing platform as a bolt-on to your inventory and expect it to be fit for purpose because you need residents to engage when they're moving in. And by engage, I mean they should be able to comment and take photos. Now we make it mandatory for a tenant to add a photo if they add a comment. So they do that on their smartphone from a web page. So it's really simple for them to do that because 9 times out of 10, tenants, residents don't engage with the inventory purely because it's either in a paper form or on an email and they just don't bloody have time. It's not convenient, so they miss it. And then they only really look at it when they're checking out. And then, of course, it's too late. And that's when
yeah,
silly, unnecessary, or sometimes necessary, depends on the circumstances, disputes arise. Whereas, if you've got a resident moves in and there's a small stain in the corner of the room, if they comment on it and take a snap, it protects them. But equally, on the flip of that, if when they move out, there's a small stain, but then a great big whopping iron burn, it's not plausible to say it was like that when I moved in. So therefore, it
yes.
protects the landlord or the agent. So it really does sort of work both ways. And um, you know, obviously, there's a lot of talk at the moment about lifetime deposits, deposit replacements, etc. Um, and it's almost like you know I don't really, feel passionately about either of those approaches. Really, I think anything that makes things better for the industry as a whole, more efficient, is going to be a good thing. But I think technology can be a key part of that and just make it so that it is
I,
transparent
I think so.
and that everybody understands what's expected.
And I think that forward-thinking agents who are working with forward-thinking suppliers like yourselves, they know that when it comes to adjudication of deposits, whichever deposit system you're with, you don't stand a chance unless you've got a detailed inventory. And you would be
Yeah,
amazed at
absolutely.
how many people still don't understand the value of an inventory. They think it's a nice to have add-on. It's not a nice to have add-on. It's essential if you want to
Yeah.
see any part of your deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the big thing is as well, let's not forget as well, condition and cleanliness is one element, but massive onus now on compliance. If you don't have an inventory, how do you show the smoke alarm was working?
Yeah.
Um, how can you demonstrate there wasn't mold on the ceiling or that that the back door had keys or the windows had locks and all these things relate to housing health and safety rating system or fitness for human habitation. So for me, it's obviously it's a no-brainer. I would say that because I'm selling inspection software,
He's a little
but
bit
yeah, I
biased,
think it
but
is.
to all the people out there in property land who are looking
Yeah,
to invest in 360 technology, get in touch with Richard and the Inventory Hive team. All their details are on kerfuffle.com. And I suppose one of the beauties about working with Inventory Hive is they have an in-house development team, which means they're constantly taking feedback and their product is constantly evolving to fit the needs of the users, the agents.
yeah, absolutely, David. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much,
No problem at all. Richard, thank you very much for your time.
David. It's been a pleasure.